Hello and welcome to the ANDE Annual Conference. My name is Stephanie Buck. I'm the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs Communications Associate. You're joining us live from the ANDE Annual Conference, and I'm here with Manuel Wiechers. I hope I got your name right. Who is our keynote. He is the founder of Ilumexico, which is a social enterprise in Mexico that's bringing solar energy to rural communities that are typically hard to get to, and these communities often don't have any access to energy or light, and we're so excited. He's fresh off of his keynote discussion and decided to join us for a little follow-on conversation. So Manuel, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and really what inspired you to start Ilumexico.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Stephanie, for the invitation. Glad to be here and glad to have participated in the conference. Some really interesting stuff that we'll touch upon. So I'm Manuel. I'm right now 31 years old. I studied engineering at the National University in Mexico. I got involved in climate change and energy early in the university with an engineering background and perspective, and started doing a lot of research on solar, renewables, and was very passionate about climate change. Then I got a job. I didn't want to get a job. I wanted to go there. But I got a corporate job at General Electric, and I worked there for a year, and in energy as well. There I met one of my co-founders, and through the university, through the group, I was able to go to a conference in Canada where I learned about the off-grid issue in the world. So 1.2, in that moment, 1.4 billion people didn't have access to electricity. That's close to 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7 people in the world that don't have access to light, which we're so used to having everywhere. So
for those who might not be as familiar with what we mean by off-grid, you kind of just explained it. It's these people who don't have access to the electrical grid, but can you just tell us a little bit more about what that means, and then...
Definitely. Yeah. So basically means that when you get to your house, there's no switch that magically turns on. No? Yeah. So these families rely on candles and diesel for lighting. Usually these families are in a rural context, so they live far away from any kinds of services. And they, even though they have a limited income, they have to purchase candles and diesel lamps for lighting. So basically their whole life is limited to the hours of the day, and then at night it's hard to study, to be productive, and even have to have family time. No? So it's a huge development issue that's been getting more and more attention. And well, we decided to start a company in Mexico was attacking this specific issue, which is for 3 million people in Mexico.
Okay, 3 million, that's a lot of people. Great, so yeah, tell us more. So you were interested in this, and then how did you kind of go about into starting in Mexico then?
So we decided to enter a business plan competition. We were still working, still studying, sort of to see where that led us, and got together with some other friends to build a technology. So we built a prototype of a solar home system, very small, for 2 lights, and did a business plan for a competition from Santander Bank. So we participated in this competition. I remember I pitched to a group of like judges, mentors, audience. And when I finished the pitch, I told all my friends, like, we're never going to win this. Like, it's impossible. We actually won the award, which was to our surprise, a very exciting moment. And then with that, we quit our jobs and went directly to Veracruz, which is a state in Mexico, to find customers. A friend of mine introduced me to a person who knew a community that had was off-grid. And then we took our prototypes, which we built in our living room, and started installing those, starting seeing how people responded, seeing if they were willing to pay for the solution, and then started off a formal company some months later.
Oh wow, oh, that's fascinating. How was it how did your family react when you told them that you were going to quit your job and start this business?
So I think they were present at this award ceremony when we got there, so they were really excited as well. My family, my grandma and my dad are entrepreneurs as well, so it's not an uncommon thing. And they knew I was always wanted to be involved in something that had to do with climate change and development and etc. So it wasn't that big of a surprise. And I liked my job and the people there were amazing, but I knew I was not going to be there for a long time.
Okay, oh, that's great. That's really wonderful to have supportive family members and other people to help you keep going. So I'm also interested in your model. One thing that we learned in the keynote discussion was that you really try to employ local people in the community to be ambassadors, as well as giving them the technical skills to be able to install the solar panels and all the technology. Can you tell us more about that and why you decided to go that route, and what the impact has been
Sure.
of that approach?
Sure. So our model has 4 basic pillars. The first one is technology. We need to integrate and find the best technology for off-grid solutions. Second is last mile distribution, which is how do we reach these very isolated, very marginalized, and very complicated regions. Third is financing. How can we provide these customers with financing mechanism to pay, either through a service or through a credit or something, so they don't have to pay more than they already spend. And fourth is community involvement and development. So we believe that working in regions that are so far away, different cultures, different language, different geographies, it's very difficult to do that without involving local youth. So we are very keen and have a lot of programs on how do we find young entrepreneurs in these communities to become part of our team and actually manage their region. So we have a whole program where you become an ambassador and start helping us, and once you're an ambassador, then you can become a formal employee. So we're creating formal jobs to people who are don't have any kind of jobs available to them. No? So they're usually relying on agriculture or other activities, and we're trying to create a formal job and then giving you the training and the tools to then grow our business on your own. So that's a really interesting experience to see how this youth has grown year by year. We visit them and we have a conference where we all get together, and seeing how they are growing, how they are learning new things, and how they are even improving our business is fantastic. And I think that's a key thing in any entrepreneurship that's involved in a rural context or whatever context you are, is involving whoever you're working with.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Are there any particular stories from some of those community members, especially young people, that really stand out and continue to inspire you?
So that's cheating, because we said that in the conference. But yeah, there's a couple. I mean, we have Lourdes, which is a young lady. She was maybe 22, 23 when we met her. She's a single mom, and she lived in a place called Cerro Liquidambar, which is from the nearest town and phone reception is 2 or 3 hour drive, and then a 1 hour walk uphill.
Wow.
So when we reached her community, she was really interested in the solution. She wanted her kid to be able to study at night. So she purchased a system from us, and she started helping us translate to her community, because most of them don't speak Spanish. So she had a little bit of Spanish, and she spoke her local language, Mazateco. And then she convinced most of her neighbors to join the program. So we immediately identified that she was a leader and that she was motivated, so we offered her to be the ambassador. She was an ambassador for 6 months, basically helped us with maintenance, with payment collection and whatnot, and then we offered her a formal job. So this was 3 or 4 years ago, and now Lourdes is certified technician with us. She has provided electricity to over 1,500 people in the region, and she's now working to grow the region and improve our work there. So that's a really interesting story. Someone who had a motivation, had the emotion to do something for her community, but didn't have the pathway or the tools. So we see ourselves as we are facilitating people that want to help their community to be able to have the tools to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really awesome. So along this route, so you started Ilumexico about 9 years ago. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced from a business perspective and or from a personal perspective?
Oof, so that's a very long question. There's been challenges all along the way, and I think the challenges evolve with time, both on a personal and on a business level. So business-wise, at the beginning was really hard for us to, first of all, to have this mentality that it had to be a social business and not a social project. And that was really hard to convince investors and people to get on board. So we had a lot of pushback in the sense that, why don't you have a normal company and then you do this with your foundation once you make enough money? So it was really hard to challenge that idea and say no, we want to do this for a living. And sort of we had a mindset that was a non-profit sort of hybrid model, and then how do you turn that into a profitable business, which can then in turn have more impact. So that's on the first side, and I think we took a long time to get used to that. And then there's a lot of challenges once you start growing. So how to hire, who to hire, the whole founder's journey, and we started, 8 of us started together, and now I'm the only active one there. So this whole process on people knowing having other dreams, knowing what they want to do, and sort of decision-making process. So having that transition into like one manager and building a team, that's a complicated one. And then growing to a point where you need to hire like talented people and etc. is very complicated. And personal level, you're all in the business and sort of start like leaving other things behind. And then eventually you have to find a way to balance those two things.
Absolutely. So along that, well, there are two more questions that I have for you as we start to wrap this up. The first is, during your keynote discussion, you talked about how you tend to get lots of advice from different investors and founders and mentors, and you said that it can be kind of hard to focus sometimes. So how do you find that focus?
So it's complicated because there's so many amazing people and organizations trying to help entrepreneurs, and they usually are keen on helping the entrepreneurs that are starting to be successful or starting to get well known and whatnot. So it's very hard to say no to these things. And at the beginning we were over consulted. No, we accepted all of the programs, all of the mentorships, and some of them don't end up adding as much value because you can't focus enough time on them, and it's complicated to say no. No? So after a while we did like a very hard standpoint, whereas if it's an award that's less than this amount and for this stage, we're not going to even consider it. If it's something that makes us lose our focus and our time, we're not going to. So we really handpick these opportunities, which are huge and amazing, and the whole ANDE network is full of them. But it is hard to say no. And also as an ANDE member or an organization trying to help, it's also hard to say, I need to look for new people, new entrepreneurs, and not the same old or the usual suspects.
Yeah, that sounds very, very challenging. And within that, or it can be outside of that scope as well, you're facing all these challenges. Everyone knows that being an entrepreneur is really hard. So when you're kind of facing those difficult moments, what gives you hope or what encourages you?
So I think it has its hardships, but it's also amazing, and you have a lot of freedom and different things. But definitely it's hard. It's not like getting your check every 15 days and not worrying. Now we're 60 people, so that's 60 families that depend economically on our work, plus all of our customers, which we have a huge responsibility, plus investors, so it's a lot of pressures. I think always the vision and the fact that we're doing something that has impact is amazing, and we never want to lose that. No, even if we become a larger company, if we get more revenue, if we start growing, never lose that sense of impact of what you're doing. So something that's really important is always having touch with our customers. So we usually go to the communities, and I love like turning on the light for the first time, seeing people smile is something that never gets old. The day that gets old, then I'll probably have to change jobs. No? And the other is seeing all these people like Lourdes or like the other people we saw in the video, which is we're providing like economic opportunities, jobs, and motivation to people who otherwise would have to depend on other sources of income, which are more limited and not as formal. No? So that's an amazing thing to see as well, see how others are now getting this project that started 9 years ago and making it their own and really pushing this vision forward. So that always warms the heart and is amazing.
That's wonderful. Really great to hear your story, and thank you again for joining us. For those of you watching, please tune back at 1:15 p.m. where we'll get to hear from Katuchika Sandi, who is based in our East Africa chapter, interviewing Liz Wilson from the Small Foundation about an initiative we have there. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon.